What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today's video is a special request from Patreon supporter Saturndusk, who asks that I finally get around to doing my review for Ultraman 1966 Part 2. If you want to support the Patreon, you can using the link in the description below where you can get access to content early, you can get access to the Discord community and chat with me and some others. You can also request videos like this. I should also mention that he requested this a little bit ago before I went on hiatus, so I'm gonna look a little different through the rest of the review. I just wanted to refilm this intro because I didn't like the other one I filmed. Alright, take it away, Paz D-Man. I am of course reviewing the Mill Creek Blu-ray set, so today we will be checking out the episodes on disc 2 of this set and reviewing those. Spoiler warning for all the Ultraman episodes coming up. I will be breaking down the plot of all of them, and I gotta give a little heads up right at the start. Today we're gonna get a little wacky, a little wild, and a little weird. That's right, because this is Ultraman disc 2 and not disc 1, they decided that they can get a little wild with things. And they do get very wild.
Ultraman, Ultraman, here he comes from the sky. Ultraman, Ultraman, watch our hero fly.
So let's recap a bit. Last episode was one of my favorite episodes of this series. I commended it for its serious tone, great setup, unconventional fight, and fascinating world building. Now we are jumping into the Lawless Monster Zone. Not one of my favorite episodes of the series. The Lawless Monster Zone opens up with some scientists exploring a volcanic island and immediately going missing. A month later, the Science Patrol is sent out to find them. The Science Patrol flies in to discover Red King having a brutal fight with Chandra. Red King tears off one of the Discount Gauss's wings before sending him running. I'll be honest, I was kind of shocked by the level of gore in this children's show, all things considered. I guess I shouldn't have been because I know Ultra 7 goes a little bit more nuts with that stuff. I'm excited for that. I quite enjoy it. Just then, Magular appears. I guess you could call it a monster island. Right? The Science Patrol splits up and investigates to discover that the laboratory on the island has been destroyed and all signs point to the original committee being dead. Hayata and Muramatsu battle Magular and successfully kill him using some grenades. What a win for the Science Patrol, they finally did it. As Magular is dying, he knocks Hayata down a cliff, causing him to pass out and lose the beta capsule, which will become a reoccurring theme. Look, I get it. The beta capsule isn't the most practical of objects. It's not like something you could wear on your wrist, right? But I'm telling you, my guy Hayata loses this thing constantly throughout this show. I didn't mention it during episode 1 of my review series, but he has lost the beta capsule a few times throughout those episodes, and he is gonna lose it a few times more throughout this review. Muramatsu tries to help, but almost gets Hayata killed by throwing boulders at his head. And then a friendly little monster called Pigman shows up and helps Fuji's group find the last surviving scientists. And it's revealed that Pigman is a helper kaiju who has taken care of the scientists this whole time. Pigman's eventually killed this episode by Red King, who knocks some rocks onto the little fella. Rest in peace. The two groups converge as a distress signal is sent out after Red King attacks. Hayata finds the beta capsule and transforms into Ultraman! There's a reoccurring thing in the episode where Red King keeps dropping rocks on his toes, and then Ultraman throws him around for a little bit until he's finally defeated. The episode ends with a funeral for the fallen scientists. This is a very strange episode. The Monster Island idea is a bit before its time, but it isn't pulled off super well. Despite having some pretty good on-location filming and some nice plant monster attack scenes, the kaiju suits don't really look great in this one. Red King has a terrible design that I will never understand the love for, although Pigman does have a certain appeal to him. But on the whole, I'm not big on this episode. There were a decent amount of good ideas in here, but they weren't given the proper treatment. I rate this episode a 6 out of 10. Next up, Lightning Operation. A massive storm cuts off a group of Boy Scouts from civilization, leaving them trapped and hungry on the far side of a lake. Meanwhile, Gabora, a massive graboid with legs, appears and starts to eat uranium and attack mines. The Science Patrol and the JSDF mobilize to combat the kaiju using massive flamethrowers. The plan works, but sends the Baragon-looking monster right towards the Boy Scouts. Hayata, Fuji, and Hoshino take a helicopter to lead Gabora away from the people. Gabora hatches his shell head and reveals a standard kaiju head underneath. He shoots a heat ray at the helicopter while the science patrol saves the Boy Scouts. Hayata is shot down and explodes. He wakes up, locates his beta capsule, which he's lost, turns into Ultraman, and fights Gabora, the kaiju with King Kong's roar. Ultraman tears the protective frills off Gabora's head, causing him to bleed out. Ultraman then flies off and Hayata is immediately seen, making his return quite questionable. How did he get there so quick? I don't know. I'm assuming we get the answer in a few episodes. I guess Ultraman can kind of do that, but we'll talk about that when we get there. It's strange in this one though. Overall, this is actually a pretty cool episode. Gabora is a neat kaiju with an interesting double design. The tension with the Boy Scouts is pretty good, and there are some fun interactions that I actually really like in this one. I also like how this episode features Hoshino. Most of the episodes this disc don't feature him, so I like that he gets some play here. The fight ends with a refreshing finisher that occurs after a good battle with the military. I'm always down for that. Overall, this one is a 7.5 out of 10. Next up, we have the Big Daddy, the mysterious Dinosaur base. The most infamous episode in Ultraman history opens with a scientist named Nakamura feeding his strange animals in a cave, which is actually a pretty cool set. The scientist, who looks like an even crazier version of Dr. Mifune, feeds an unseen kaiju named Jiris. The science patrol is sent out to investigate a strange increase of fish in the lake Jiris lives in. Arashi takes the S-16 submarine into the lake but fails to spot a very GMK-esque moment as a large tail moves behind a rock. Muramatsu tells the gang to take a vacation for the weekend after they find nothing out of the ordinary. Some reporters question Nakamura about the Loch Ness monster, mentioning that a scientist went missing investigating a Diplodocus in the lake. There's a weird flashback here with a filter that makes it almost impossible to read the subtitles. Luckily, it doesn't last long. Ide and a reporter get kidnapped by Nakamura after following him back to his base one night while he was feeding Jiris. The scene plays out with lots of tension, and there's actually a pretty good jump scare here. Then some fishermen try to poison the lake to increase their haul. That seems a bit extreme. I'm not sure it would really work. Oh, hey, look! That's a lot of fish.
That's a lot of fish.
The poison awakens Jiris, who rises from the lake and is attacked by the science patrol using a spider gun. And I have to say, there's something very familiar about Jiris' design. He kind of looks like the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park. Yeah, that's probably it. Nakamura attacks and reveals himself to be Professor Nikaido, the scientist who went missing in Lake Loch Ness. Nikaido orders Jiris to attack and gets trampled by the monster. Ide calls for backup and the science patrol responds. Jiris does battle with Arashi and the spider gun until Hayata activates the beta capsule and transforms into Ultraman. There's actually a really cool spinning effect that happens on Hayata as he transforms. Ultraman stops Jiris from destroying Nikaido's lab and calls him Stinky in the process. Jiris and Ultraman posture and have a little bit of a beam showcase before their battle. The fight is incredibly strange and very physical. Ultraman laughs and taunts Jiris constantly while dodging Jiris' electric beam. Ultraman then tears Jiris' neck frill off, and hey, I get it now. Jiris is played by suit actor Haruo Nakajima. I'm recognizing Nakajima's performance in the suit. That's why it seems so familiar. Ultraman uses Jiris' fin like a bullfighter to taunt the kaiju. Jiris at one point gets a tree stuck in his mouth and stands up, which is very ironic because it makes him kinda look like Godzilla during that one scene from King Kong vs. Godzilla. A lot of the time, the Ultraman kaiju kind of have a Godzilla reminiscent design. And although this one doesn't, we do have that little moment, so it kind of has that parallel as well. Ultraman charges Jiris and uses an invisible blade to slice through him, causing Jiris to bleed out of the mouth right next to his metal pipe-like tongue. Jiris then falls over dead. Ultraman then honors him by putting his neck frill back on. Ultraman flies off into the sky as Nakido crawls over to Jiris' body and dies next to the monster he created. The screen then burns out in a very somber ending. In the English dub for the episode, Jiris' name has been changed to Kira, which raises an interesting plot hole. If Ultraman is fighting Kira, why doesn't Kira just use his Death Note to quickly kill Ultraman, giving him a heart attack? That would be a quick way to win the fight. Honestly, what was this episode? This episode is awesome. It's the perfect amount of 1960s cheese and features a bunch of wacky stuff that I've come to love, as I'm a huge fan of the 1970s Godzilla movies. Although generally I prefer my kaiju stories to be darker, if they're gonna go light, this is the perfect way to do it. This episode is wild and over the top, with random plot twist reveals, a mad scientist, kaiju fights, and Godzilla. That's right. Due to a limited budget, Tsuburaya had to scrap his plans for creating a new kaiju suit and design for Jiris in return for something pre-made. He negotiated with Toho to use a Godzilla suit. Due to Toho being in production for Son of Godzilla at the time, they knew that the old Godzilla suits would need to be retired, at least for the meantime, and so they allowed Tsuburaya access to modify his most famous creation. Jiris was created using the head of the Astro Monster Godzilla and the body of the Mothraverse Godzilla. He was given a yellow and green paint job and fitted with a large frill. Because the suit was custom made for one man, legendary actor Haruo Nakajima took up the role as Jiris. Although not Nakajima's first time appearing on Ultraman, this is his most famous appearance. The episode doesn't try to hide the fact that they're using Godzilla's suit either. They play right into it. Jiris sports a modified version of Godzilla's roar, as many Ultraman kaiju do, and has his frill ripped off, exposing him as Godzilla. Much like many of the early Ultraman kaiju, Jiris features a modified version of Godzilla's atomic breath as well. Even Jiris' name plays into this. All you need to do is add a Go, and you've got Gojiras, or Gojiris. The suit was returned to Toho after filming the episode and presumably restored to its previous paint job, as it is featured during the water scenes in Son of Godzilla, which came out 1 year later in 1967. The fight between Ultraman and Jiris was the first bit of Ultraman content I ever saw as a kid. I watched it on YouTube back in the early days of the website and was captivated by it. As time went on and I lost the clip, I became obsessed with it. For many years, I thought it was something I had imagined. As I learned more about Godzilla and discovered that this wasn't featured in any of the movies, I kind of went crazy. It took until around 2015 for me to learn that the clip was from this show called Ultraman. I learned this after watching Kaiju Spotlight Episode 3, a feature made by Super DM64 on Jiris. I rate Episode 10 a 9 out of 10. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. Next up, wow, we got the Rascal from outer space. Remember when I said we were gonna get a little wild, a little wacky, and a little weird this time? Well, this episode's primarily why. Hoshino and his friends play one of the strangest games I've ever seen while some girls watch. A weird meteorite falls from space and possesses some strange powers. The kids discover the rock and learn it has the power to transform into whatever they're thinking of. So naturally, they turn it into marbles, a toy race car, a cake that they don't eat, and a piano. Whenever they stop thinking of the object, it turns back into an orb. Hoshino delivers the orb to the science patrol, who pass it off to scientists that run tests on it. The orb isn't from our world, go figure. And it's presented at a conference where people use it to turn into a space Uchi and an old man. A villain, played by Ren Yamamoto, gets a hold of the orb and tests it out. Yamamoto uses the rock to transform into a kaiju named Gongo. Gengo? I don't know how to say his name. He does this so that he can go around pranking hotel staff and guests. Yamamoto transforms Gongo into a building-sized kaiju. The rapid growth of the stone knocks Yamamoto out, trapping the stone as the kaiju. Gongo starts playing in the city and destroys a bunch of buildings. Gongo then fights some Mazer-esque tanks and gets one of his ears shot off. Hayata responds and injures the big baby monster, causing it to have a temper tantrum and knock his jet into the ocean. Hayata then takes his sweet time to transform into Ultraman underwater. Oh my god. Ultraman and Gongo break out into a highly choreographed routine that feels more like a comedy act than a kaiju fight. Gongo fights like Ultraman's little brother, and Ultraman responds by teasing him because he knows he has the upper hand. Eventually, the man wakes up and is asked kindly to forget what he was thinking about, so Gongo will disappear, as if that would ever work. Hey, please stop thinking of the thing I'm reminding you of. The man agrees to turn Gongo into an orb after seeing the devastation caused, and Ultraman delivers the orb to the Science Patrol. Hayata then decides that the orb doesn't belong on Earth and transforms back into Ultraman so he can fly it into space, marking the first time someone has ever gone Ultraman twice in one episode. I can't stress enough how weird this episode is. It's unusually strange. In an already strange show, the entire premise is crazy to begin with, and it's utilized in such a weird way. A man is given ultimate power and chooses it to run some sick pranks, and the kaiju fight feels like something from Casa Bonita rather than something from a kaiju film film or TV show. For those of you who don't know, Casa Bonita is this really weird restaurant out in Colorado. I'm not sure if it's still open, but if it is, I highly recommend anybody in the area who is just passing through or whatever, go check it out because it's one of the strangest things you'll ever go to. They often have this weird gorilla show where like a gorilla's on stage and he'll get out and be chased around and he'll trick people into jumping into this water pool over a waterfall. Look, I can't do it justice by describing it, but it is an incredibly unusual experience. Meanwhile, you're just supposed to be eating. That's exactly what this episode feels like. It's so goddamn weird. Gongo has a super interesting design as well, making this feel all the more surreal. Look, this episode is absolutely as absurd as they come in the best ways. The name, The Rascal from Outer Space, tells you exactly what kind of episode you're going to be in for from the title alone. This is a solid 9 out of 10. Lots of fun. Next up is Cry of the Mummy. The episode centers around a scientific committee that opens an excavation site in a cave where a mummy man is discovered. Akihiko Hirata reprises his role as Dr. Iwamoto and has a team investigate the mummy. The were-mummy is resurrected by electricity and murders some scientists as it escapes the lab. He goes on a rampage in a sewage plant and tries to get back to his resting place. The mummy is attacked by a bunch of guards and the science patrol until he is shot to death. As the mummy dies, he calls out for someone to avenge him. The mummy's guardian monster, Dodongo, I don't know how to say that name either, awakens. Dodongo goes crazy, exploding a mountain and attacking mines with his laser eyes. The science patrol show up and blast Dodongo's eyes in order to blind him. It works, but doesn't stop the rampage. Hayata transforms into Ultraman and starts to ride Dodongo, making me feel super bad for whoever plays the butt end of the kaiju. Ultraman takes some pity on the monster, but still decides to shoot it to death using a specium ray. Ultraman then flies off and fires this little disc out of his hand that transforms back into Hayata. Iwamoto reflects that they were the ones who caused all this to happen. He realizes that humanity was tampering with forces they didn't understand. This episode features one of Ultraman's new powers, the ability to fire that little disc out of his hand that turns back into Hayata. I'm assuming that that's what happened in the previous episode where this occurred. It was also kind of predictable because the second you saw the design for Dodongo, which I will admit is a really cool design, I love the gold, feels like a statue come to life, you immediately knew, okay, this is the kind of show where Ultraman is just gonna ride this thing. Immediately, I called it out loud right as that thing showed up. I said, Ultraman's gonna ride this at some point in the fight. And the very first move he goes to is, yeah, I'm gonna ride this. So weird. This episode tricks you into thinking it's gonna be a return to form for the series in many senses of the term. The episode captures the feel of Ultra Q, a show that I haven't seen many episodes of, I've only seen 1 or 2, in the first half, and then it captures the feel of Ultraman in the second half. But don't be fooled. This episode is just as strange as the others on the disc. The Mummy storyline is quite refreshing and very entertaining, and both the Mummy and Dodongo feature super cool designs. Once Dodongo shows up, he gets immediately trashed on, making him quite the sympathetic adversary. The fight is, once again, super weird and off the wall. This episode is an 8 out of 10. Next up, Oil S.O.S. A bunch of oil factories explode across the world with no determined source. A Japanese man notices some lights in the water that materialize next to the refinery he's working at right before a truck explodes. The Science Patrol investigate and eventually discover evidence of a kaiju. The monster Pestar rises from the sea and reveals himself while sinking a ship. Akihiko Hirata's Dr. Iwamoto is called back in for support. The Science Patrol tried to use oil to lure the monster further out to sea, but the plan doesn't work quite as hoped. Ide chokes under pressure and enrages the kaiju, who heads to shore. Pestar goes on a rampage in an oil field and blows up massive amounts of the refinery. In a shocking twist, the Science Patrol successfully defeats Pestar using missiles from the VTOL jet, or the VTOL jet. I don't exactly know how to say that either. Ide runs off and tries to put the fire out of guilt, and the Science Patrol mobilize to save him and stop the fire as a team. Hayata transforms into Ultraman to save the day. He's briefly attacked by Pestar, who he kills in one shot of the specium ray. There's not even a fight in this episode. Ultraman then uses one of his most iconic abilities. The fire extinguisher out of the fingertip ability that we've all come to know and love is used to set the fire out of the city, or the refinery, whatever you want to call it. It's a refinery, not a city. My bad. You know, watching Ultraman fire white liquid out of his fingers reminds me of another fictional character that I love who has a very similar power. Ide is rescued by the Science Patrol, who give him a pep talk and make him feel better. They then leave the scene after the day is saved. This is one of the most experimental episodes of Ultraman to date, and by that I mean where I'm at in the show. Not only does it take a super interesting approach to a kaiju design, but it takes an interesting approach to the episode structure. Pestar features a very unique two-person suit that is joined by the actor's arms rather than the torso, where these suits are normally joined if there's two actors. It's a strange starfish kaiju bat-like monster. Could be very cool in CGI. Pestar isn't the main antagonist of the episode either. He's an inciting incident for the fire, which is the major conflict, giving it a very grounded and realistic feeling. The fact that this episode doesn't feature a kaiju battle sets it apart from all of its former counterparts. Although I enjoyed the tension in this episode and I can appreciate its alternative approach to Ultraman storytelling, it's not one of the most engaging episodes of the series. Oil S.O.S gets a 7 out of 10. The Pearl Defense Directive. Fuji discovers that pearl oysters have become endangered as a result of a strange monster named Gamakajira, who spends his time eating all the oysters in the sea. Fuji has a prominent role in this episode and spends most of it raging that Gamakajira has eaten and digested a bunch of pearls. Gamakajira eats pearls with the use of its long, nasty, tube-like vacuum tongue that reminds me of another fictional character that I love. Gamakajira attacks a pearl truck, and the Science Patrol respond by attacking it on the shoreline. Gamakajira fires a heat ray out of its back, defeating the Science Patrol, who take the night to repair their jet. Fuji has some unknown anger birthed inside her at night as she listens to Gamakajira chew her beloved pearls. The next day, the Science Patrol launch a double attack on Gamakajira involving balloons and bombs. An electric net is used to catch Gamakajira, but it's ultimately unsuccessful as Gamakajira breaks free after being lifted into the air and causes Hayata to crash. Fuji goes to help Hayata, who finds himself on a rocky shoreline where the rest of the Science Patrol members defend some female beachgoers who are attacked by Gamakajira. The monster eats their pearls until the Science Patrol has a counterattack where they utilize explosive pearls against the monster. A massive jet is then fired up Gamakajira's butt, sending him flying into the air. Hayata decides that he can't let the Science Patrol have this one. Oh no, they got the last one. He transforms into Ultraman. As Ultraman, Hayata chases after Gamakajira until he collides head-on with him, causing him to explode. The pearls are then restored to the ocean, and Fuji gets herself some nice new jewelry. This episode is an actual return to form, with a very basic monster storyline and plot structure. Although the ending is a bit non-conventional, with Ultraman only providing the final blow to the monster rather than doing battle with it, the rest of the episode feels very standard. This episode also marks the first appearance of a much more standard Ultraman face design that comes closer to his final design. This face is smoother than it has been previously in episodes, and the slits on the eyes for the actor to see out of have been reduced in size. The mouth has also been changed from pursed and open to harsh, geometric, and nearly closed. Despite giving my favorite character of the series, Fuji, the spotlight in this episode, the storyline doesn't feel as inspired as many of the other episodes on this disc have, and this episode is not as good as it could have been. The Pearl Defense Directive gets a 6.5 out of 10. Might be a 6 out of 10. I don't know. We'll keep it as a 6.5. Well, that'll do it for this one, guys. That's the review. What were these episodes? I don't know. They were strange. I spent a lot more time on these ones because there was a bit more to cover with these. They're a bit more complex than the ones on disc 1 were. I don't know, man. Disc 3, I've just started, and it's keeping up with the strangeness. So we'll see how the next one goes whenever I put it out. Once again, I wanted to give a huge thank you to Saturndusk for requesting this video. I know I said I was going to do more of these Ultraman videos, but they just weren't much of a priority for me. So I'm glad he requested it because it made it more of a priority, so I actually did work on this video. And I really like checking out all the episodes on this disc. I'm definitely going to try and make sure that the turnaround between this episode and the next one is not as long between part 1 and 2 like this has been. Saturndusk also sent me his reasons for why he requested this video, so if you want to check those out, here they are. Basically, it's just a bunch of propaganda trying to get me into the Ultra fandom. Well, it's not gonna work, cause Waybig would still win, damn it. Once again, final thank you to Saturndusk, and again, if you want to join the Patreon, link in the description below. Alright, I'll let past me sign you guys out. Thank you guys all for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.